Well, a very good afternoon. It's Thursday, the 16th of February. And joining us today on the Late Bite Lunch, I am delighted to be joined by Padraic Óg Gallagher from Gallagher's BOXTY house. So, as we are on Fat Thursday, sit back, relax, and join us for a cup of coffee and all the chat. Good afternoon. Indeed, it is indeed the Late Bite Lunch. Very good afternoon to you. And for those of you watching on playback, we'd love to have you join us live if you can, so that you can actually join in the chat. And if anyone has any comments or any questions for our guest, Padraic, please do comment on the various streams, and we'll post as many of them as we can possibly during the show to our guests. So first of all, Padraic, I know that with Patrick's Day fast approaching, you're absolutely up to your oxters between getting all the corned beef prepared, etc., etc., etc. So I'm delighted you could take the time to come and have a chat with us, because I know there's a lot more to talk about other than just the basics of the food. So, but first of all, for those who may not have seen you on the show before, perhaps you tell us just a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you do.
Padraic Óg Gallagher. I'm a chef, restaurateur, sometimes a brewer, and manufacturing as well now of food products. I don't like that word manufacturing because it sounds so pretentious in a way, but we make wholesome stocks, sauces, and deliver to the multiples in our plant in Tala. But the main thing is the BOXTY House restaurant in Temple Bar. We're there. We'll be celebrating 34 years there next Monday, the 20th of February. And that's my first baby, I suppose, where I started this whole business off, and very proud of it. We just actually closed in January for 2 weeks and installed new kitchens and new bathrooms, and I must say we got it done in cracking time. January is always quiet. My only thing about February is as well, the only good thing I always say is that it's kind of short. They're tough times, tough months of the year, but roll on March, roll on the season, as we say. And I'm happy to say last year, the season extended right into the tourist season extended right into December, which normally it falls off around the end of October. Christmas is a funny time in the restaurant business in Temple Bar. It's not as busy. The week after Christmas, from St. Stephen's Day to January 1st, was our busiest year since 2007. Busiest week since 2007, which is a great great forecaster for the year coming, especially with all the gloom and doom talk of recession. Sometimes I think we can actually just talk ourselves into a recession, Rory. But I'm pretty positive for the year. We're onwards and upwards. Tough 2 years, that lockdown, mentally very tough. I think as I expressed to you before, it's as an entrepreneur, to be told you can't open and not knowing when you're going to open just does your head in. Just really, really tough. Very, very difficult. But myself and my wife, we got through it. We didn't kill each other, and as I say, I kept most of my team together as well, and we're back up to over 50 employees again. So it's all positive. Looking forward to 2023.
That's absolutely brilliant. Well, as I said, I'm absolutely delighted you could join us today, because I know on some of the many conversations we've had, because I probably frequent your place more than I really should for the waistline.
No, 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 no. That was all low calorie stuff.
Oh no, well, I mean, I think that is one of the beauties of it. It is. It's so colourful and at the same time still extremely wholesome. But one of the conversations we had is the impacts on the hospitality business at the moment between the various government measures.
Yeah, well, the big one is the VAT 9. When I was president of the Restaurant Association, I successfully campaigned with the CEO, Adrian Cummins, to maintain VAT 9 back in 2013. And that was one of my first tasks. And I remember clearly having a meeting with Minister Noonan at the time. We presented a report from Deloitte saying that it was actually more beneficial for the government to keep the VAT at 9% for the jobs created, for everything else. And the minister threw the paper right back at us across the table and said, I don't care what Deloitte says. I said, the revenue said, tell me that has to happen, it has to happen. And this was 2 days before budget day. And whatever, we put the pressure on, kept the pressure on, and they kept the VAT at 9. I'm hoping the same happens this time. It's crucial for us in our business. And 13.5%, it's a 4.5% difference. It's massive at the end of the month when 70% of your sales are food related.
No, but I mean, at the same time, and I think it's very, very important to stress that while it's very easy to say, well, it's only 4.5%, the reality is for a small restaurant, that is a 50% increase in their VAT, which is a massive drain on their cash flow, which is, there's no question, you're going to have to see layoffs to be able to keep cash flow there to meet it. So, I mean, it's very important because I've heard several commentators talking about, does 4.5% really make that big a difference? And the reality is, yes.
Yes, massive difference.
If you're one of a big chain or that type of thing, it's not, the impact wouldn't be as severe. But for small independent premises, it really is crucial.
And it does affect sales, obviously, so, and that's where it comes from. And it's, 4.5%, it's a difference between taking on more employees or not, as you say. And that's where we're at. We're labor driven. We're a labor intensive industry. And actually, the thing that annoys me a lot as well is when people go on about it, but you're all very cheap labor. There's no such thing as cheap labor anymore. There's not. We have incentive driven, I call them sales staff in the restaurant, and they earn handsome money. I have people working with me over 20 years. Some 25 years. They wouldn't stay in this industry and wouldn't stay working with me if it was a bad place to work. It's a great place to work. Our industry is fantastic. What's another thing that's crippling us at the moment as well in the city and in the rural communities as well is the occupation. Hotel rooms taken up. 1/3 of the hotel rooms in the country are occupied by refugees. That is not sustainable. I'm not saying that they shouldn't. We have to do our part in this whole war for sure. But if you have 1/3 of the occupancy of a hotel in a small village taken up by people that don't really have money generally to spend, as opposed to a tourist coming in with foreign euros, with foreign dollars, bringing it into the life and soul of that community, the shopkeeper, the local pub, everybody gets an effect from that. And it's not like there's big pharma drugs going back out of the country or computer parts or chips or whatever. That money stays in the country. The tourist has to eat 2 or 3 times a day, have a couple of drinks, go to the shops. That's money lost if you can't fill that hotel. And especially, like they're saying, this 54% of Donegal hotels are occupied by refugees. How are they going to do the season? The hotel might survive, okay, but the little villages would be devastated, decimated.
Another interesting conversation that we had recently, and I think it's well worth highlighting for people who may not realize just how much of an impact it can have. You were highlighting the fact that in particular around where you are working from home.
Twats they call it. Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. That's the days that they work in town. Monday, dead. Friday is like a Sunday in town. So you have a lot of coffee shops closing down. You have a lot of restaurants that would have survived on that, on business lunches or entertaining people in the daytime and evening, but they're not even there, you know. And then of course your Friday night or Friday after the pub or after the office going to the pub, that's been hit as well. You know, it's the thing about it gets me is that it's very well and good that people can work from home, and if they have that choice, that's great. And the government have introduced legislation to that effect. But where are they going to do? What are they going to do with all the office space that's going to lie vacant for those other days? They should be looking at introducing some sort of legislation that can free up that office space and convert it back into homes, bring families back into the city. You know, you go into European cities and there's life at night time. Now, if they don't do something, this is going to really kill the city. And there should be families, and not just 40 square meter boxes. You need at least 60 to 80 square meters to have a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom apartment that you can raise a family in, you know, and entertain them, you know, live in town.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
don't kill the city centres.
Yeah, I think that would be absolutely brilliant for Dublin. Again, and we're like in Temple Bar is getting a huge amount of bad press lately with the price of the pint, the whole lot. And again, I'm sure you'd agree, there are certain premises in the area that stretch the imagination way.
But listen, it's market driven. They're full.
Yeah.
What's the issue? The people that are going in there, they're listening to music. I know for a fact that in Gogarty's, they put the price of their pint up after 11 o'clock. The guy pays over €1 million a year for musicians. That's local employment. 1 million a year is his bill on. That has to be paid somewhere. So you normally get a tourist, and the tourists don't come in drinking like the Irish. They'll come in and sip on a pint for an hour. You know, that's the way it is. They're you know, the old story going there saying that about for every older Guinness drinker that dies off, we need about 5 to replace them. But you got a tourist coming in, and you know they'll have a sip and a half pint for an hour. Irish don't do that. They're having the crack, but they're listening to the music. They're taking in the culture. Somebody has to pay for it. I'm not defending it. You know, we have our own model. We have our own pricing. We have our own beer, which is even better. So we brew our own, so we can price accordingly. But you know, rents in Temple Bar too are outrageous. Rates in Temple Bar, rent in Dublin in general is, but you know, you can't do a pint of beer for €5. People have to be prepared to pay to go out. It's a luxury going out. I understand that. We're the first ones to be hit when you get hammered with a recession or even a talk about a recession. The first thing you do is like restaurants. Nah, I won't do that this week. You know, food. I'm not going to take on. I'm going to stay in. If you're going to save for something, you're saving in. If you think it's going to be a recession down the road, yeah, you're not going to spend money. I'm the same. You know, we all do it. We're all human.
Absolutely.
But I pick where I drink, and I pick where I eat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I read the menu before I go in, Rory, so I should know what price is going to be.
Yeah. No, well, in all fairness, and I have walked the length and breadth of Temple Bar over the years. And one of the things that actually drew me to the BOXTY house to begin with was the fact that what they were offering was value for money.
Thank you.
And that is the reality. That between quality, portion size, service, and then you have it priced perfectly accordingly for that, and it is not overpriced. And I can promise you, Padraic, that if I thought for 1 second it was, I'd be the first person to tell you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like I would be the first one to scream and shout if I feel that I'm not getting value for money, because
it's a catch-22 thing as well there, Rory. And again, people will complain about the service industry not paying staff. If you're not prepared to pay for the food that we produce, which costs money, and you pay for the overheads and pay for the privilege coming in to eat, we can't pay staff. We price accordingly, and you know, I take pride in it that we have. I'd say when you come into the restaurant first to work, you'll do 4 weeks on a minimum wage, and then you're on a bonus scheme. You're on a profit share. There are very few in the restaurant that actually work on minimum wage. That doesn't work anymore. Nobody will work for that. So most of our staff are on well above the living wage. We don't broadcast, we don't shout about it, but nobody stays with you for 20 years if they're starving.
Well, as I remember, a publican I spoke with many years ago, and I thought he summed it up absolutely perfectly. Either you pay your staff well and they'll stay with you, or they'll pay themselves well and won't last too long.
That's very true. And how many barmen's funerals have you been to?
Yeah,
that's the old story.
Well, that's exactly it. So, one of the things I did want to talk to you about with St. Patrick's Day fast approaching, you do the most amazing corned beef. So I thought we'd have to have a little chat about corned beef.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, we don't pickle our beef ourselves. We buy it from Mullingar Meats. Paddy, I've been buying it off him for, I'd say, close on 25 years. Does a great product. But corned beef, actually, as an Irish product, we controlled corned beef from Ireland from it resulted in the Cattle Acts of 1667 banning the exportation of live animals to what was then Britain. So we were left with all this amazing beef in Ireland, and they couldn't figure out what to do with it. So they had an advantage again, as we always seem to have, and a tax advantage. In us, we had a very low tax rate on salt. So Ireland became the world centre and controlled the market in corned beef for about 120 years, from 1870, 1880, right up until after the Napoleonic Wars. In fact, the British and the French navies both provisioned at Cork Harbour while at war. Incredible. But the corned beef out of Ireland was absolutely amazing. Great, not the bully beef that came from Bentos down in Argentina. Or Uruguay, I should say, not a canned stuff, fresh stuff packed into a barrel. There wasn't an animal safe for 50 miles radius of Cork. It was one of the biggest exporters of there. And it's funny because they had a whole trade, because they'd go with their corned beef to the West Indies. So they'd pick up rum in the West Indies, bring it up to North America, and pick up flax there, bring the flax back for the linen market, the linen here. So there was a triangle of trade, which was incredible. But the fact that we controlled it for so long was just incredible. It was only really when North America started producing their own beef that they could have fresh beef that they didn't. But they had a good run of it.
Absolutely. And seeing as we're on the topic of food, for you lately, what's your go-to light bite lunch?
Oh God, dude! But you know what? On weather like this, now it's a nice crisp day here in Dublin. An Irish stew.
Yes.
I love just an Irish stew, or the beef stew. And I know we both have a passion for coddle. Coddle being the Dublin pork dish, pork stew. And I've always said that coddle should be like your cassoulet in Carcassonne. Every different bar and every different restaurant should be fighting over who makes the best one, or your paella in Madrid or in Valencia. And we don't respect our food enough. We don't. It's an absolutely brilliant, lovely dish, wholesome, hearty, and healthy. It's great. But Irish stew. But this time of the year too, and we had St. Bridget's at last celebrating the real saint of Ireland. I think the real woman, the only woman out there, Colcannon, or champ. And Colcannon would be associated with St. Bridget's Day, of course, So
right.
Mashed potatoes.
Right. Well, again, now on the subject of Colcannon, talk me through your recipe for Colcannon.
Okay, I'd probably take about half a kilo of potatoes. This is the only time when I'm making a mash that I will peel them. I must admit, I don't peel them for the BOXTY, and I don't peel them for a lot of other things, but I'll peel them just for the color and the aesthetics, the look on it. About a half a kilo, 500 grams of mashed potato. You'd want probably about 4 scallions, 100 grams maybe of scallions in that. I actually put leeks into it as well. So what we do in the restaurant is we make a base of like a champ, which is with the scallions. but I'll also put leeks through that. You want some, about 500 grams of potato, 100 grams of leeks, 100 grams of scallion, maybe about 50 grams more of butter through it. Boil your potatoes, let them strain them off, dry them out a little bit. And I'll use a rooster. Rooster's fine but Mars Piper, but a dry potato, a floury potato you want for sure. And then I'll mash that. I'll take some milk, maybe about 120, 150 milligrams of milk or so. Heat that in water or heat that in a pot. Add the scallions to that and just let them out a little bit. Now, don't boil the milk, just heat it and let the scallions out. And then I'll add that back into the mash that together with the leeks and butter. And then I'll actually separately saute off some kale in a little bit of rapeseed oil or some butter or a mixture of rapeseed oil and butter. Chop it finely, saute it off just to take the crunch out of it, and then add that back into the mix. And there's your Kilcannon. And traditionally, when I was a kid growing up, we used to get it in a big bowl, and you'd have it must have been about maybe half a pound of butter put into it. It was a well made in the middle of it, and the butter would melt in it, and we used to scrape off the sides. And you'd eaten this on a bowl around the table, 4 or 5 of you, and the trick was never to let the well actually break and the butter leak out, so you'd be dipping into it. My cholesterol's a little bit high these days, but I'm glad butter's getting good press again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. On the subject then of the mashing, because again, it's something. Would you use a ricer? Would you use?
At home, I use a ricer. It depends on how you. Sometimes I like it kind of more rustic, so I'm not going to mash it as much. But if I want a fine mash and for that butter to absorb and to get into it, a ricer is perfect. Or we use in the business with a mouli, and you can actually buy moulis in some. So you just twist it around, and it'll just. It's like it's going to do what a ricer will do for you. But ricers are cheap and cheerful, so yeah, I would do that. They do the trick perfectly well. Yeah. But you remember, like years ago, and a lot of my recipes will come from 17th, 18th, 19th century, and we try to adapt them into the 21st century. They wouldn't have had ricers. There's Florence Irwin. She wrote. She was a cook. Wrote 2 books, the Irish Country Recipes, I think it was called. But she wrote for the Northern Whig from 1907 to 1957, and she wrote 2 books. But she actually used to travel county down. She was paid by the Department of Agriculture to travel around showing people how to cook on a stove. And if you remember, this is kind of going from Victorian into Edwardian times. This would have been just the turn of the 20th century. 1907 she did it to 1914, the outbreak of the war, and she collected all recipes from them, and they were amazing recipes. But how they used to do their champ or their mash was with a beetle, which was a big stick, a pounder, and they'd pound it, and that's why the name poundies comes from. You'll find poundies is a name for mash in the north.
Yeah,
but it was a beetle.
I just have a question emailed in here from Marie looking to know, does the BOXTY House have a range of vegan offerings?
Yes, we do. Our BOXTY actually is vegan. We don't put milk in the BOXTY. We have 2 vegan. There are lots of options you can actually request to remove the cheese if we have cheese on products, because our vegetarian chili is a soy-based product, but we do put cheese on top of that. If you're vegan, you can request no cheese on top of it. As I said, all the BOXTYs are vegan. We don't make them with water. You just have to let the kitchen know they'll regenerate them with rapeseed oil as opposed to butter. But you know what? Fair play to you for being vegan, but I could not give up my potatoes and butter.
No, I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely. As we mentioned at the top of the show there, today is Fat Thursday. So when
I got my coffee, but I have no donuts. No donuts.
Yeah. No, I actually think it's a Polish holiday.
Yes.
And the idea is it's always the Thursday before Ash Wednesday. Yeah. It's the last hurrah. And the idea is then that between now and Pancake Tuesday, all the goodies are finished. So today is the big one to go on the attack with all the goodies and then have them all finished by next Tuesday.
Yeah, is that a reflection, you think, of our society in Ireland, whereas we just go for the one day Shrove Tuesday and
Yeah,
try and get shot of it all? Or is it a
absolutely.
reflection as that we didn't have, maybe we weren't as wealthy as Poland, and didn't have that amount of food to take 4 days to get rid of? That's another
Absolutely.
question.
Absolutely. Time is very quickly catching up on us. So I wanted to ask you, you have a ready meals range coming to the supermarket soon.
Well, we'll have a chowder coming to Dunnes stores. We have some sauces coming to Dunnes. We're working for the Simply Better brand, so we've been developing a lot of products with Dunnes, and I must say Dunnes are fantastic to work with. So that's not a plug anywhere. It's just they've been really good, really helpful, because it's been a transition for us from going from a kitchen to a production to an actual production plant.
Yes.
There's a lot of attention to detail. It's a different level of HACCP, a different level of measure with the HSE. You need a different license to produce, and it just reflects on what care and attention that the departments do actually pay when they want to on food production in this island nation. It's incredible the amount of protection that, and rightly so.
Yeah,
It's right.
absolutely.
It costs a hell of a lot of money to do it, but you have to have it in place there for safety, for security, and for confidence. And confidence in Irish food. We have the best food in the world here, and it's great to take it to a stage further, finishing it and bringing it to supermarkets.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I mean, some of the Irish-made products that are available here are second to none. I mean, even
Yeah.
premises generating pet food and the rigorous testings they go through,
Yes.
right? It's so I can only imagine for human
Well,
consumption just how much more it is.
exactly. Well, you just see that whole rigmarole over the past few weeks with the salmonella, and
Yes.
how they're able to get to the bottom of it, track it down, and eliminate it. So it's there. The checks are there. We only ever hear about the bad news, but you never hear about that's maybe the 0.0001% of it. That's something that's gone wrong. You never hear about the 99.9999 that goes right every day,
Yeah,
because it
absolutely.
doesn't make news. It doesn't make news. A
That's
bit like
well,
Temple Bar. Temple
yeah,
Bar throughout the world, is it's the most. You say anyone you ask anyone, oh, are you going to Ireland? You said, oh yes, I've been to Temple Bar.
yes,
So
absolutely.
it's a great flagship and a great tourist spot, and it is fun place. And they're 35 years next November, and it's been a fun place for me to work.
Yeah.
Getting too old for the fun now, but
Oh no. Well, listen. Enjoy your celebrations next week with your anniversary there. Time
thank you.
has run out on us. Thank you very much for watching. We will be back in 2 weeks' time again with another guest, another range of stories to talk. And in the meantime, Padraic, thanks very much. Good afternoon.
Thank you.